happy July. I don't know how it is already July 2nd. I feel like 2024 is just flying by. I am thrilled that we're moving into full swing summer, which is super fun. And we are getting closer and closer to the Paris Olympics, which I am psyched about. And we'll talk about a little bit more as we get closer to Paris. But this week, we're going to talk about a couple of books that I would recommend that are centered around the Revolutionary War and Independence Day, so that I can recommend some books for you to read this holiday. Let's get into it. The first book that we're going to talk about is I, Eliza Hamilton by Susan Holloway Scott. There have been tons of books in the last 10 years circled around Hamilton and his life, and a lot around his wife specifically, Eliza. A lot of that stems from the musical Hamilton, which if you haven't seen it, listen to the album or watch it on Disney Plus. I cannot recommend it enough. It's not possible. This book very specifically circles around Eliza's life from the time that she meets Hamilton as a young woman all the way until he dies about 25-ish years later. It's really well written, and I really enjoyed Susan Holloway Scott's voice of Eliza. It was a really great book to read. I really enjoyed it. It also features some other Revolutionary War highlights and humans that we talk about all the time when we talk about this period in history. So it's fun to get to have this cast of characters together all in one book. If you are looking for a book that encompasses more of Eliza's life, there are historical fiction that meets that standard. And one example would be My Dear Hamilton by Stephanie Dray and Laura Kamadi. So I would recommend that book as well. But this one I thought was a really great read. I really enjoyed it, even though I already knew a large part of the story. It was still a very great read. So I definitely recommend if you are looking to get into this founding father and his life and know more about his wife, who is just an absolutely fascinating character in her own right. The next book that we're going to talk about is also about the wife of a general during the Revolutionary War, and that is The Traitor's Wife by Allison Pataki. This is about the woman behind Benedict Arnold and the plan to betray America. So if you don't know who Benedict Arnold is, I won't tell you too much. The tagline on the front cover kind of gives you enough information on what this is going to be about. And we've talked about Allison Pataki before on this channel, and what I really like, one of the things I really like about her books is I like that she takes a chapter from later in the books and plops it into the prologue so that you really can see where you're building to. I think that's really fun. There are many things that I like about this book. The first one being that Peggy Arnold is just a fascinating character, and it's really cool to get to listen to her tell this story and see what she is thinking as she moves through the American Revolution and what this looks like for her. She's a fascinating piece of this story and a wildly forgotten one when we talk about history and Benedict Arnold in general. One other thing that I really liked about this book was the way that as you're going through the story, you can see the spots where Benedict feels unappreciated or slighted or whatever it may be. You can see how we're building to a spot where somebody's in a psychological place to create treachery. And it's a fascinating thing to be like, no, don't do that. That's going to create something bad. And you can, like, because you know where the story's ending, you can really see the way that develops. So I really enjoyed that about this book. It's a fun way to get into the minds of these characters. Allison Pataki is a fantastic author, so I would definitely recommend this book, especially if you have not read anything yet about the life of Benedict Arnold. It's a fascinating book. I definitely recommend. The last book we're going to talk about today is 355 by Kit Sargent. For those of you who don't know, during the Revolutionary War, General Washington had what is called the Culper Ring, and it was his ring of spies. What we know for sure is that in there was an Agent 355 that was definitely a female agent. However, nobody knows who she was. It was never discovered, her name, identity, what city she was in. There was no additional information about her. This book is all about who could potentially be her, who is her. It's inspired by many true characters and true stories, and it follows 3 different women from different parts of the war and how the war impacted them based on where they were at and what that looked like for their lives, who was a spy, what that looked like for that woman, and what it looked like to be a part of the revolution during this time, specifically for women. Well, what's unique about this book compared to the other two books that we've already talked about is that these women were normal, everyday women. They weren't married to the generals and the men who were leading this war. It's just a part of their life, whether they really wanted it or not. War came to their doorstep, and that's what this book is about. Now, if you are interested in the Mysterious 355, not only is this book great, but Marie Benedict also did a short novella that is for sure available on Audible. I've also seen it on Libby, so it depends on your library. That is about 355, and it tells a story that's actually got some similarities to this one, really marking the interesting things that we think that we know about this potential character. And so if you're looking for a short book for this season, I would definitely recommend that one. It is a really fun, quick, either listen or read to really dip your toe into who this character could potentially be or what that looked like for them. It's a really fascinating piece of American history that is wildly overlooked, but it's fun to get to engage with Agent 355 no matter who she might have been, which is really fun. We will actually talk about one more book really quickly. This is the book that I plan to read this 4th of July, which is Dear George, Dear Mary by Mary Colvey. I am excited to read this book because a lot of the times Washington is a character in the books that I read that have to do with the Revolutionary War, but he is never the main character. It's never told through his eyes. This book is based on letters that George Washington and his first love, Mary, wrote back and forth. So I'm excited to get to engage with this time period through the eyes of this man who played such a pivotal role in the making of the United States. So I'm pumped to get to interact with that. I would love to hear what books you are reading this 4th of July. If you found any good historical fiction, I would love to hear about it. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Happy reading.